Good evening and welcome to the Planning Board meeting for Wednesday, October 10th, 2018, Town of Dudley. And present this evening we have Gregory Benoit, member, Dan Emiston, clerk of the board, Pamela Humphrey, vice chairman, myself, Guy Horn, chairman, and our town planner, Don Johnson. And we're sorry we're late this evening, but we had another meeting in this room that ran over previously, so that's why we're late. First item on our agenda, approval of minutes. We have meeting minutes from September 12th and meeting minutes from September 26th. And I believe there was a correction that needed to be made to one of those minutes.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, last meeting I pointed out that in item C, sub-item C, that Mr. Benoit cannot make a movement or make a motion and then second it as well. It's still in the minutes. So the rest of the minutes, as far as I can tell, are in order.
Yep.
I propose or make a motion that we approve the minutes of the Wednesday, September 12th meeting with the provision that that one item is corrected.
Okay. Would you mind just highlighting that? We can give it back to the clerk.
Yep.
Thank you. And then also on, we could vote these together if there's no changes to September 26th. Does anybody have any comments on September 26th meeting minutes?
I can amend my motion to include the minutes from September 26th.
That would be great.
I'll second that motion.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Unanimous? Okay. The next item on our agenda is appointment of full planning board member to fill vacancy. So we had a vacancy. Kevin Sullivan has left the board, and we approached our alternate member and asked if he would take on the full-time position until May, and he agreed. So there will be a meeting, a Board of Selectmen meeting next Monday. If we could get 3 people from the planning board to attend, I know I can attend that meeting. I think their meetings usually start at 6:30 or 6 o'clock, is it, Don?
6:30.
6:30. So if 3 members, Don, if you could post that as a meeting of the planning board, because if we'll have at least 3 people there, it'll be a quorum.
Posting is a special meeting.
Special meeting, that's fine, just for the appointment.
Yep.
Should only be about a 10-minute agenda item. And that will bring us back up to a full 5-member board, I should say. Sorry. Item C, A&R plan for 25 Marshall Terrace. This was tabled at last meeting. I believe the applicant's going to go to the ZBA and ask for some relief there. So we'll table it again until we hear from her. And item D is the discussion of subdivisions. I'm going to ask if it's okay that by unanimous consent that we take item D and E at the end of the meeting so we can get to our 7:15 public hearing, definitive subdivision plan for Dudley Estates. Is everybody okay with that?
It's fine.
Okay. So a little bit late, we're 20 past 7. So this would be, we basically be reconvening the public hearing that started in September. Do you remember the date on that?
12th.
September 12th. And we do.
The last meeting was just carried over to this meeting.
Right, and the applicant wasn't at the last meeting and asked for a continuance, so that brings us to today. And I'll give the floor to the applicant if you would like to tell us where they are in the process.
Good evening. My name is Ben Osgood from Ranger Engineering. So since your last meeting, we had submitted revised plans to Graves Engineering for their review, and we received their review letter yesterday. And essentially, without going through every item, they have, agreed that we've taken care of all of their concerns, many of which were technical in nature. Just I don't think we need to review every one of them. Had to do with pipe sizes and inverts and a lot of that kind of stuff. I do want to talk a little bit about, the board had some comments and we've made some adjustments to the plan. So on Jesse Road, this plan shows the sidewalk being extended all the way up to Alton Drive. It also shows Jesse Road being widened out as much as possible. So what we've done is moved the sidewalk so that it would be right at the edge of the right-of-way. It's a 4-foot sidewalk, and then any area between the existing pavement and where the proposed sidewalk it will be built, will be paved to become part of the roadway layout. So it does I think right here, of course, the pointers are great, but if I can't read it from here, it's close to 24 feet up in this area, maybe even a little wider. Down in here, I think comes out to be about 23 feet wide, 22.9, I think is what the plan says. So it is a little bit wider in that area, and that is the narrowest area in the roadway right there. So the other thing we did, Mr. Johnson wanted easements around our swales. So any drainage swale, they wanted us to put an easement. So you can see the swale is up in here, and these are easements that go around the swale and come down around. So the swales are all located within an easement. And because one easement is narrow right here, we've added a waiver. Then the size of the easement, and that's on page 1, and it's 13 feet wide in lieu of 25 feet. And that's it's a drainage swale, it's not a drain pipe.
What lot number was that?
That is on lot, I think it's 10, but let me just confirm that. Lot 10.
Thank you.
So those are kind of the minor changes we've made to the roadway layout and so on. We've added stone bounds at all the corners of the easements and corners of the open space. They've been shown. And then the other couple of issues I wanted to discuss that came up were traffic. So we submitted a traffic memo. It was done by TEP LLC. They're a traffic engineer. Kim Hezaverdian is the principal engineer there. And essentially, his conclusion is that there will be no effect on the roadway system as far as traffic is concerned. He very succinctly details out how many cars will be, how many trips will be created by the development. It's all based on the Institute of Traffic Engineers data, which is they have a national database that predicts how many vehicle trips are created when you build a house. And essentially, they look at the peak hour, the 4 p.m. peak hour and the morning peak hour. That's when most of the trips occur. And for this development, in the worst case scenario, I think is the afternoon peak, there's 20 trips. And what he's saying, that's 5 trips in either direction. So what 20 trips come in the roadway, they're distributed evenly. 5 are going out towards Mason Drive, 5 go out towards Alton, 5 come in from Mason, and 5 come in from Alton. So that's where he gets 5 trips in each direction, which is about once every 12 minutes during the peak traffic period is what the prediction is. The other issue I asked Graves Engineering to look at was, and they commented in item 30 of their letter, was the flooding on the north side of Jesse Road. And, you know, what we have stated was that it's on the north side, everything is flowing from north to south. Our whole stormwater system flows water towards the south, away from Jesse Road. And his letter says, I don't see how the proposed subdivision could have an impact to flooding on the north side of Jesse Road. You know, as I mentioned earlier this evening at the Conservation Commission, the culvert under the road, looks like the Highway Department has cleaned it, and they need to be vigilant about keeping it clean, and that's going to alleviate a lot of flooding, except in very large storms. It's a 24-inch culvert, which is pretty large, can carry a lot of water. So, you know, as long as it's kept clean, except for the large storms, you know, the flooding should be minimal. The other question was flooding in the area in the wetland up in here. All of our detention ponds are located along this side of the property, they discharge into this wetlands. There was a fear that the wetlands was going to flood. Mr. Walsh from Graves Engineering, he did a little calculation, and he says even if all the wetlands stayed in the wetland and all the excess runoff that we're creating stayed in the wetland, it might rise an inch. So if it ponded there and did not flow away, it would rise by an inch. So a very minimal amount. That wetlands is lower than all the homes over on Mason Drive. So realistically, there will not be any impact to those homes because of this project and the stormwater. That's pretty much all I have. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Does your latest plan address, at the last meeting, we discussed a 50-foot untouched vegetated buffer zone between the houses that are on the road of Alton Drive now and the new houses that are proposed to back up against them?
Correct. We did, and I had forgotten about that issue. We have shown an easement on our survey sheet, V080801, and it is a 75-foot no-cut buffer easement, and it runs along those properties
Okay.
on Alton Drive. So basically, that will become, a deed restriction and an easement that the owners will not be able to clear.
And that basically gets us back to where we were, the last meeting that you attended.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Correct.
Any other questions from the board?
I have a question. I was looking at the grading plan and where the detention ponds are, where the swales are, and based on my calculations, there are 3 houses on the proposed area that will not have some sort of detention or retention on their property. Every other piece or parcel does. How do we protect the people who are going to be buying these houses from being aware that there are detention ponds in their backyards? They can't put a swimming pool there, they can't put a swing set there.
Right.
There's easements for swales that they can't put a sandbox in. How do we protect the future residents of Dudley from this?
I guess, I don't know if that it's protect, but it's notify and make
Notify is
sure
a
that
better
they understand that.
Be clear on their deed.
Right, we'll put a deed restriction on there. I did talk to Don about that. I have no problem putting a deed restriction that says that the easements are there for drainage and are not to be altered in any way, both the detention ponds and the drainage swales. The enforcement of that is going to be, the fact that it is in the deed, and the town would have to enforce it if somebody did go alter those. But, it would be a condition of the approval. The approval is referenced in the deed, and all the conditions of the approval, if you specifically ask for several to be in the deed, they will be in the deed as well. So,
And then, if these houses have these easements and detention ponds on their property, to me, that space is not usable. How would, I'm having a hard time, it's a conflict in my mind of how are we proposing lots with a certain size when a good portion of that lot is not usable.
well, it's not that it's not usable.
I could use a slope as an example. The people
So-
who have the slope in their backyard, they can't do anything with that.
They could, well, it's mowed lawn. They can mow it. I've actually seen a property that was about an acre in size. Half of it was a detention pond, and it was a flat infiltrating detention pond, so it wasn't wet. We seeded it, and the water infiltrates in a storm. And the gentleman whose property is on, it is mowed like a park. It's beautiful, and it just looks like a lawn. He could use it if he wanted to. It's their property, they can use it, they just can't interfere with the function of the pond. We've seen them where we set up soccer nets. Kids play in these long, narrow ponds along a road in North Andover, and they set up soccer nets, and that's their soccer field. So these are designed all to be dry. They do obviously water ponds in them during a storm, but they percolate after the storm. All the water goes into the ground. The groundwater, based on the soil testing that we did, is 2 feet below the bottom of these ponds. And so they're not gonna be sitting in groundwater and subject to containing a lot of water and wetland vegetation. They're gonna be, for the most part, mowable grass.
How steep are the slopes?
The 3-to-1 on the ponds, which is a mowable slope, it's not too steep.
And this current design has 3 ponds?
Actually has 4 ponds.
4 ponds, okay. And the way the design works is those ponds, after a rain event, would hold some water for some period of time.
Correct. The pond 1 and 2, which is located up in this area here, they drain out in about 30 hours. Pond 3 is located back in here. That actually does not hold water, so it will be drained at the end of the storm. It just controls it, but it drains out. And then pond 4 is down here, and that's calculated to drain out in about 9 hours. And that's based on the area of the bottom of the pond and percolating at 1 inch per hour. So these are not deep ponds. They're only a few feet deep, 3 or 4 feet at the most. They're not like they're 6, 8 feet deep. They're not gonna hold a lot of water for a long time.
And the swales on the other side of the road, where do they drain to?
So the swales drain to a culvert which goes down between a couple of the houses and then into pond 3. Let me just.
It's not underground, that's a grade culvert, correct?
Correct.
And it gets underneath the street via a pipe, or?
So the swale, they're back here, there's a head wall right here with a 24-inch culvert, and it goes into the street, down the street, then off and into this detention pond here. And
So
that's
the
all
water flows onto the street?
under the street, right.
Onto or under?
Under.
Under,
Under.
in a pipe, under the street.
And the inverts work out with the slope, that from one side of the road to the pond, you've got flow?
Yes. And we've done all the calculations. That was one of the items that Graves wanted to see, was the rational formula calculations it's based on a storm of about 2 inches occurring in a half an hour. That's the capacity of all these pipes.
Any other questions from the board? Okay. All right, so right now we'll open it back up to the public. Anybody that has any questions, if they'd like to come forward, now's your chance. John, do we have a sign-up sheet we can put out there?
Thank you. Michael D. Boyce, 2 Jesse Road. I have a couple of questions. Now, am I mistaken? You said it was going to take 72 hours at the last meeting, or am I wrong about that?
The requirement from DEP is that they drain in 72 hours. Our calculations show that they drain in 30 and 9.
What is, besides the water company providing water to these places and the taxes that we pay, what about the sidewalk that goes nowhere down Jesse Road? I mean, if you had a child that lived in there and they wanted to walk down Mason Road, walk to Mason Road on Jesse Road. Would you trust that? Your child walks in the road to a sidewalk that goes nowhere?
I don't know if, once they got to Jesse Road, if there's a sidewalk, once
It's
they
not
got,
one there now, but if they're gonna put more houses in there,
right.
and there's gonna be more children,
They're already going beyond what's required by law for them to do. The sidewalk around the cul-de-sac, and they're doing it on both sides of the street, all the way up to Alton Drive and to the end of their property on Jesse Road. I mean, I don't know if once they got to Mason Road, if there is a sidewalk there or not.
it's not, but I mean, where the crucial part is, where people coming down off that hill and coming down, and if you have another car that's coming up Jesse, where are they gonna go? They're gonna naturally just go to the right.
I mean, the main reason for the sidewalk around the cul-de-sac is so that the kids that gonna get picked up by the school bus are gonna get picked up at the intersection of the new street and Jesse Road. So they don't have to walk on the new street down the middle of the road. They'll have a sidewalk to walk onto the bus stop, because the bus will not go down the cul-de-sac to pick them up.
Just because they don't have the room to turn around down there.
Typically, they don't go down cul-de-sacs in general.
So they're only gonna go a certain way down Jesse Road, and you guys, as the planning board, don't see that the people that building these houses could put a sidewalk down Jesse Road for the safety of their families coming in? I mean,
We can't force them to do that.
well, can't you suggest it to them? To
It's
say,
beyond-
you
it's
know,
We could suggest it, it's beyond our purview to enforce it, though.
I will point out the letter from Chief Wayner does suggest that also. Have you read the letter from
I
Chief
haven't.
Wayner?
Haven't seen that.
He
The
does
problem-
suggest it go all the way down to Mason Road.
The problem with that is that it would require wetland filling.
Uh-huh.
As a developer, we can't fill that wetland. The town certainly can make a case and fill that wetland if they say there's a need, and if the town wants to do it, I think they could do it. As a developer, DEP would frown upon us filling a wetland to build a sidewalk like that.
My other question is, the other day, about 2 weeks ago, I sat in front of my window, and I counted how many cars went up Jesse Road, how many cars went down in an hour. It was 57 cars. They didn't put nothing across the counter to count. They're just going, saying, well, this is why this house has so many cars, this house has so many cars, but they don't account for the people that uses that as a cut-through. So how do we know if, he said it's every 5 cars, every 7 minutes, 8 minutes, 12 minutes? It's a lot more than that. And what I know is if you're gonna take a survey of traffic, you put a cross piece in there to count it, to count the traffic, what's going down there, what's coming back and forth. And it's easy for me to say, well, statistics says that it's only gonna be 5 cars in 20 minutes. That's how it was when I first moved to Dudley. But it's a lot more than 5, 6 cars every 12 minutes.
Did you get a copy of the traffic study?
No.
Okay. We can give you a copy of it. Basically, what it's stating here to us is that, do you remember what time you were taking this count
At 7 o'clock
in the morning?
in the morning,
Okay.
and then I went up at 3:30 when the buses went up the hill. Started going up the hill. And from 3:30 to 6, there was at least 40, 50 cars just in the evening, going up to the road.
The traffic engineer's study says a weekday daily for that street should be around 215 cars total in a day, including AM and PM peak hours.
Correct me if I'm wrong, is the traffic study just for the impact that this development will have on local
Correct.
traffic? It doesn't take into effect what local traffic already is?
Correct, correct. And if you look at the beginning of his letter, it says the Institute of Traffic Engineers, ITE. Basically, if you do a development that has less than 100 peak hour trips, it's assumed that it does not impact the current capacity or service level of the roadways that are adjacent to that site. So
So it's kind of, if the counts are correct, assuming, instead of 50 cars per hour, we'll be at 55 or
Right.
54 or whatever the.
Right. And I don't doubt his counts. I mean, they
I
sound.
just for assumption's
Yeah.
sake. Yeah.
Right, yeah, and I think, you know, they're probably pretty accurate, and but we did not count the traffic that's there. But as you can see, even if you look at a peak hour trip, even adding our traffic, there are not even 100 cars per peak hour, and that doesn't, even what's there doesn't constitute having a traffic study.
So then this 215 number is not for Jesse Road, this 215 number is for your street?
Correct, that's in a day, right.
So there'd be 215 cars going up and down your street on a daily, on a weekday?
That's correct. Any day, there's 215 trips, that's in and out. So if you go to the grocery store, that's 2 trips,
Yeah.
go home and back. So that's what they estimate, and that's through studies all over the country on, you know, residential homes, how many trips they generate, just in, you know,
So
the
that's
guy
200,
delivering oil or delivering gas, you know,
right, but
yeah,
that's
propane.
215 more cars, trips that would have to, you know, because your street empties onto
Right.
Jesse Road, that's 215 more cars a day on Jesse Road.
right. But what they look at is the peak hour. That's where, you know, 3:30, 4 o'clock, that's where the traffic gets bad. In the morning, 7:30, 8 o'clock, that's when everybody's leaving their house to go to work. The kids are going to school. Those are the times that they look at. You know, and that's what because they're kind of the worst case, that's what they develop all of their numbers on.
And in the AM, they're saying at the peak hour in the AM, there would be 18 additional cars, and in the PM, there would be an additional 20 cars.
Right.
You know, I think they're using that as a reference, but if you actually go out there and put a counter out there, we'll see the exact number. You know, I mean, if he wants to build the houses, then what's the problem? Put it out there for his own, so he has all the things that he needs to come here, so we don't abut him. That's all we're asking for him to do. You know, just give us the actual numbers. You know, that's 2 things, actual number of the traffic and the sidewalk. And like he said, you put a sidewalk in there, guess what? It's gonna flood the sidewalk out. So that's why they don't wanna mess with it.
Well, I think
I
that-
mean, if,
it's obvious a wetland, and like you said, they have to try to fill it in.
you can go to DEP and get a waiver. They've been getting waivers. What's the problem? They've been getting waivers, everything that is gonna benefit them.
We haven't gotten any DEP waivers.
Well,
Haven't gotten any, and we are asking for planning board waivers, which I could see the confusion, but they are not DEP waivers, which is a different, it's a
State
different
versus
animal.
local.
Right. And, you know, we have an engineer who has run the numbers on what our subdivision's gonna produce, and he's said that it's gonna have no impact, and that, you know, the planning board engineer agrees, there'll be no material impact. Doing traffic counts, and that's part of what, it's just, it's not going to result in anything. It's just gonna show, wow, there's no traffic. And yes, the cars travel fast there, I agree, and there are times when it gets a little busy, but there's gonna be no material impact on that, and there really isn't. The level of services are A. I mean, you're not waiting in line anywhere for more than a minute and a half to get out on Mason Drive or up on Alton Drive. I mean, the traffic flows, and we won't have any material impact on that.
no disrespect to this gentleman, but he doesn't live there. He does not live in Dudley. He doesn't live on Mason Road. He doesn't live on Jesse Road. So with him assuming, saying that there's no traffic and it's not gonna be affected, that's not true. That's real facts. You know, I mean, honestly, I'm not against the project. I am not. But we need to think this through for the safety of the new families moving in, the children now, when you go down Alton Drive, you know, the kids stay in their yards. But still, Alton Drive has a problem with speeding. So doesn't Dudley. I'm sorry, so doesn't Jesse Road, going up Jesse Road. As soon as they come off of Mason Road, it's try to get up to 90 before they get up to Alton Drive. So, only thing I'm asking for is the sidewalk, and they can go to DEP and get a waiver. He said he never did it, but he can go just like he's coming to you guys. And I just think the planning board should be not handed that responsibility of giving them a waiver when they can go get the waiver from DEP. Let them go get it. Because we're looking out for our community. This gentleman is gonna go back to where he lives, and that's that. You know, so, and the other thing I stress is the counter. Let's get real numbers. Don't get something that's, you know, well, this is estimated, this is a reference point that you can go by. Let's get the real numbers.
But you understand, regardless of how many cars go down Jesse Road today, that's not his issue. His issue is how much is he gonna add to the cars going down Jesse Road, and that's what this report from his traffic engineer tells us. They estimate that there's gonna be 215 more trips per day, per weekday. So that means it's gonna impact Jesse Road. It has to, it's coming out onto Jesse Road. But regardless of what's there now, there could be 100 trips a day, or there could be 1,000 trips a day. According to his traffic engineer, adding 215 is not gonna be a detriment to Jesse Road. That's what they're saying.
I understand what they're saying, but that's my opinion.
I know, but this
And
report
my
is,
opinion doesn't matter, I understand
this
that.
report is stamped and certified by a professional traffic engineer. We have to accept that. I mean, having them take the numbers on Jesse Road isn't really gonna change this one way or the other. We know that there's gonna be an average of 215 more cars a day on Jesse Road because of this, or trips per day, not necessarily cars. It could be the same car going back and forth 4 times, but it's gonna be 200, they're saying it's gonna average 215 more trips per day on a weekday. And according to the traffic engineer, that's acceptable. And this went to our town engineer. If there was something wrong, he would have flagged it.
So he didn't find anything wrong with the sidewalk?
The sidewalk out there is past our purview.
But the chief of police said that,
The chief
report.
asked for it, and they've already extended the one all the way up to Alton Drive on their plan.
but it comes down Jesse and just stops. Am I correct? Is that true? That it just comes down?
There's no sidewalks on Alton Drive that I know of.
No, they're not. But you're putting kids in jeopardy as they come down off of Upper Jesse Road, Alton Drive, coming down Jesse Road. What about Halloween? And I'm just using that for an example. How many kids are on Alton Drive? Over 1,000 kids, and they walk down Jesse Road with their parents. They got a parent with a car with the lights on, so they walk safely down Jesse Road. Now, you add in more houses where they're gonna be coming down, going up into this cul-de-sac here. What's gonna protect them? So they gotta walk in the woods, then come up to a sidewalk, and then get on the sidewalk and walk up the rest of the way. It really doesn't make sense, but that's what I have to say, you know. I just really hope that y'all think about it, you know. I appreciate your time.
Okay. Anyone else? Sure.
Jenny D. Donato, 10 Jesse Road. I may have misunderstood you, Mr. Horn. Did you say sidewalks on both sides of Jesse Road?
No, sidewalks
Oh,
on
okay,
both sides
good.
of the new street.
I don't need a sidewalk on my side.
Right, no, there'll be a sidewalk on both sides and all the way around the cul-de-sac on the new street.
Okay, okay. May I have a copy of that Granger study? And
Of-
may I have a copy of the traffic study?
Sure, that's public information. We can give you a copy of anything you like.
That's all for me, thank you. Thank you very much for your diligence. Yeah, I would point out, there are questions on here that you still have to address. Did I read that correctly?
Which one are you talking about? What paper do you have?
Well, did I see something?
Graves
about
Engineering?
planning board?
I think that's the Ranger one.
Ma'am, what's the date on,
Ranger one,
what's the date on that one?
October 9.
Okay.
I
think on the
thought I
third
saw
page it's
something that
addressed.
said the planning board has to, number 5, page 2, I would say, 2. Under subdivision rules and regulations,
Oh, the waivers?
number 5, in bold, it says the waivers are now listed on the cover sheet. Again, GEI understands that waivers will be addressed by the planning board and its staff.
Yes.
So, has that been addressed?
No, GEI is our professional
Yeah.
engineer. He's listed the waivers now on the sheet. And so I'm guessing that the waivers were, one was the extension of the cul-de-sac. One is the waiver that you just mentioned earlier about the 13-foot easement instead of a 25-foot drainage easement. And what, refresh my memory?
Width of the street?
The width of the
Width of the street, 24 and instead of 26, which was requested by the highway department.
So those were your 3 waivers that you're asking for.
Then there's also the trees to be planted outside of the right-of-way. Instead of between the sidewalk and the road, put them behind the sidewalk.
So they don't raise up the asphalt.
Right.
Yeah. So they're gonna be asking us for those 4 waivers. Some of them are recommended by our own town departments.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Okay.
I have one more question.
Sure.
Now, they were saying, as far as the sewer is concerned, they're gonna be putting grinder pumps up to pump up to Alton Drive.
Right.
I'm a owner of a grinder pump, okay? And mine is about, I wanna say about 150, 200 feet away to Mason Road. And they're talking about pumping up a hill to Terracotta Duck, up in the sewage line. Now, my grade is probably about 2%. And I have problems. Every 3 years, I have to replace it, have somebody come pump the hole out, and that's every 3 years. What is their plan as far as pumping all the way up? I don't know the distance that they're pumping up to, but it's gotta be, especially by his property, going up a tall hill.
So they would have met with the Town of Dudley Water and Sewer Department. Town of Dudley Water and Sewer Department has an engineer, just like we have an engineer.
Yep.
So they would have made their proposal to their engineer, and the sewers engineer would have reviewed their proposal and either agreed or disagreed with it. And if they disagreed with it, they would have made a recommendation to them as to what they needed to do to make that work. Because this isn't, this is just science. They know what works and what doesn't work. If you're a sewer engineer and you're a professional and you have a stamp, you know what's gonna work and what's not gonna work. So they're gonna give them the specifications that they know will work for the situation that they're in. And I do believe you did say you were gonna have a holding tank for each house?
Yeah,
Well, each house has a small tank. And that, so there is some time, there's some backup storage, but, and they also have the ability to connect a generator. And the system is, it's an E1 system, it's designed by the factory that produces the E1 pumps. So they actually have produced the design, and that's what will be submitted to the water department for their approval.
And it's gonna run through a high-pressure line up to the,
Right. The line steps, I think it's 1.25 inches for a while, then it goes to 1.75 inches, and then the last leg is 2 inches.
Did I understand that correctly, that the system is not going to be on emergency power?
It will not have dedicated emergency power, it will have the ability to connect a generator.
For the,
So there's a switch outside, they can plug it in to a generator, but there will not be an automatic emergency power generator on each one.
it'd be up to future residents to make an emergency
Right,
if they so
right.
choose.
So if they don't have a generator, then they can't pump up? Am I understanding that correctly?
That,
In the power outage,
In the
if there were a
power
power outage,
They have to have their own generator?
right, where the power is back on.
Right.
Understood.
So when we had the outage last winter, we went for 4 days, I believe it was, where people had to stay up at the middle school because the power was out. Well, the power was out, my tank filled up, and I had to call somebody because it got beyond the fill line. And I had to call M&M to come out to pump it out. That cost me $150, and then, come to find out, the pump shorted out because just a jolt from the power outage. So it's just so many things wrong with that system, you know? And I just think that they need to let the people that are gonna buy their homes, they need to let them know that. Thank you.
I just wanted to kind of address your last statement, that they need to let the people know about that. That kind of echoes some of the things that I feel, some things we talked about earlier about the retention ponds on the land, the swale on people's property and everything. I think we're working in the direction to try to do that with deed restrictions and et cetera, to make anybody who wants to purchase one of these houses to be aware of the situation. And I think that the project has worked with us to try to minimize these to the best they can so far.
Okay. Thank you.
anyone else?
John Giaquinto, 42 Alton Drive. One question is, may have already been answered a long time ago. I know the whole road will have to go in, but are the houses all going to be built at once or be built as you sell the property?
So, it's going to depend on the market. What I suspect will happen is they'll do the improvements on Jesse Road first, the water line, that portion of the sewer line, and they will come to the planning board and ask for leases on the 3 lots that front on Jesse Road, so they can construct those. At the same time, they'll be working on the roadway in the subdivision. They'll do the detention ponds first, obviously put the erosion control and clear the land first, and then put the detention ponds, and then construct the drainage and the roadway and the utilities in there up to a binder coat of pavement. Once the binder coat is on, they'll have lots available to sell. They'll probably come in and ask for most of the lot releases and bond what's the remaining work, and they'll construct the houses as sales occur, and that could be 1 year, 2 years. I've been in projects that have taken 5 or 6, but only 18 houses. I suspect it'll be 1.5 to 2.
2 years, yeah. Typically, just so you know, sir, on a larger subdivision, this is not that big of a subdivision, only 18 houses, but even this subdivision, depending on how the market goes with houses, the developer has the right to come in and ask if he could do it in phases. So in larger subdivisions, that's how it's done. If you're building a 100-unit subdivision, typically they would probably split it up into like 4 phases, 25 houses per phase, and as they finish one phase, they'd move on to the next phase and continue around till they're done. And that's something that this developer could do also after the project's approved, if he came back and said, I'd like to do it in 2 phases. It would require him to put in a temporary cul-de-sac, if he only wanted to go, say, 300 feet, put in a temporary cul-de-sac, build the first 8 houses, and then finish the road, put the final cul-de-sac in, and build the other 10 houses. That's something they could do. It's up to the developer. I mean, typically, we try to work with them. We know if houses aren't selling, they can't sell them. They're not gonna build them if they can't sell them, so. And we have subdivisions in town that are, I think we've got one that's over 25 years old and it's still not done, so. And I don't know how many phases they've had.
Another question, is there going to be certain hours, or is it just going to be sunup to sundown?
No, we will give them in the order of conditions when we come up with all the conditions for the subdivision. There'll be, in the order of conditions, there'll be a work time permitted for weekdays and a work time permitted for weekends. And typically, they're agreeable with abutters so that, they're not running excavators at 7 AM on Sunday morning.
Okay, one more question, actually, for this gentleman. I asked you about the fence earlier. Can you tell by looking at the plans if it's right on the line, or if I got
You got it
3 or 4 feet beyond it, or?
on the back left corner, you got 3 or 4 feet on both sides there. It's a little bit off.
On the back left corner.
I mean, you want to take, it's small, but you can take this. No, it doesn't show very well on this one. Oh yeah, see it right there? You can barely see it. It's right here. That's your fence. So you can see it's a little bit off.
So I got a couple of feet.
You got a couple of
on
feet.
this side, and this,
Yeah, this one's pretty close to your corner. Goes like that, so. A little bit of an angle. The trees.
okay, that's all.
Okay. Anybody else? Anyone else in the audience? Okay. All right. So I guess our next step would be we would close the public hearing. Close the public hearing at 8:04. Dawn, refresh my memory. Do we take a vote to close the public hearing, or is it?
If it does any harm to take a vote, you don't have to. I don't think you have to.
We don't have to.
I think the chairman can deal with that.
Okay, all right, so we're going to close the public hearing at 8:04. But that still doesn't mean that the planning board can't make any comments. So I did mention the orders of condition. Our town planner has already started making a list on those. I think most of them will be general, what you're used to dealing with. One of the things that I would like to see, I like the idea with the easements on all the drainage infrastructure, but I would like also to see, for this subdivision, because of the situation that it couldn't have an impact down the road, years to come, I would like to see that that this subdivision creates a homeowners association so that they can maintain these deeded infrastructures. And I would also like to see, I didn't see it on any of your plans, so maybe I missed it, but do you currently have any fencing around these detention basins?
We do not.
Okay, I would like to see that, because my guess is that people buying these houses are probably gonna have children, and you also just mentioned that there's gonna be a head wall with a 24-inch culvert that goes under the street. I think that's gonna be a great tunnel for kids, so I think that needs to be fenced in. And I wouldn't want to see any accidents in a new subdivision, so I think that's going to be part of our conditions for this subdivision, that the detention basins are fenced, and we'll look at what we had for standards in the past. We're not going to make you do anything above and beyond what was done in the past, but I think this is a perfect application for a homeowners association to maintain these infrastructure for the life of the property, so that we make sure that 20 years from now, if you're saying that those detention basins are gonna drain in 30 hours, that they're still draining in 30 hours. If it takes 2 days to drain out, then something may need to be worked on. And that'll be up to the homeowners to fix that, not the town of Dudley. So,
Who would inspect those to see that they're maintained properly?
Under the Stormwater Management Act, it's supposed to be an engineer once a year.
And who would pay for that?
The
The
homeowners
homeowners
association,
association.
if you so deem it.
I think the people who move in there will have interest too in that. They're not gonna block up something that's gonna go into their yard.
or that could cost them money in the future.
What's the money in the future when they for the neighbor's yard? It's
Right.
something they did.
How does that work? Is that like a condo fee?
Yeah, it's like a condo association, because otherwise,
They get paid to this company? I don't mean to interrupt you, but
No.
would it be paid to them, or who
no,
would it be paid to?
they could,
Like a pool, a kitty, kind of?
well, the way it can be stated, like typically like a condo association, the first couple of years, the developer runs it, and then after that, they turn it over to the homeowners.
Right.
And then the homeowners will elect a president, a vice president, just like any homeowners association, and those people will be in charge of making sure that everything gets maintained properly. And if it requires a $50 a year fee from each homeowner, they'll have to pay the $50 fee to have the engineer come out, inspect, and say everything's okay or everything's not okay. Or maybe it's a bi-yearly inspection, it doesn't necessarily have to be a yearly, but if the state requires a yearly inspection, then they'll have to do the yearly inspection. And then, that way there, it's kind of self-sufficient, and it doesn't put any burden onto the town,
Which is, the important thing.
which is what we're looking for.
Yeah.
Because, this is,
I don't think the developer has any problem with that for the detention ponds, the maintenance of those. Any of the street utilities, that'll eventually be a town roadway and maintained by the town.
right, we understand that, but but what we're talking about is all the swales you have and
Right,
the
the
culvert going
mowing
under the
and-
road. Yeah, the mowing, any maintenance that has to be, if the fences get trashed, I'm sure if something like that happens, it's gonna be, in somebody's backyard, and they're not gonna wanna look at a bad fence, and they're not gonna wanna have a broken fence, so they're gonna, and they're not gonna wanna pay to repair the fence all the time. So if there's kids out there fooling around or what have you, they're gonna take some responsibility and say, get off the fence and move along, versus, letting things happen that shouldn't happen. So, and then if there's trees that are growing up in the detention basin, that can have all
Need to be
kinds of,
cut down.
right, they need to be,
Needs to be mowed. There is a maintenance schedule in the stormwater management report, and they,
right.
mowing a couple times a year, at least twice a year, an inspection, policing the debris, trash.
And you're gonna have all this, your engineering firm's gonna have all this documented, so it can easily be handed over to the homeowners association, so they'll know exactly what they have to do.
Right.
Okay.
I understand what you're talking about with the homeowners association, but then would that not turn that into a private road then instead of a public road, where they could restrict certain people from coming
No,
in and out?
Not necessarily. They're only gonna be responsible for maintaining the infrastructure that handles the stormwater management for that project. They're not gonna.
That was my point too, about the roadway is a public way. It will be accepted by the town at some point. If it's done correctly and the town wants to take it.
Or not, yeah, we have some that are not accepted. Yeah.
It just seems to me that if they were paying into a fund to keep up that neighborhood, they would be able to put up a sign that says, don't come in if you don't live here.
No, but they could put a sign up on the detention basin saying that no emission allowed, it's their detention basin. That's what they could do. Unless they wanted the homeowners association, after they get the houses purchased, before the road is accepted, if they wanted to make it a private way, they could, but they would be responsible for snow plowing and maintenance of the road. It's a lot bigger road to hoe than, just maintaining your own stormwater management.
The gentleman said that they're gonna cut the grass once or twice a year. I don't know about your grass, but I know my grass grows a whole lot more than, much taller.
Yeah.
So,
Bare minimum, I guess, then. Bare minimum, I guess?
Yeah, that might be the bare minimum, 2 times a year.
okay, all right,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yep. Okay. So we've closed the public hearing. We have the latest comments from you. You've provided all the new updated plans to the planning board office? Okay. So we have until the 29th, I believe, of October. So we have, when's our next planning board meeting?
24th.
The 24th.
Also a hearing that night, too.
Okay, so we could have all our conditions ready, and we could take the vote on the meeting on the 24th, if that's all right with everybody on the board? Yeah. Okay. And as soon as we get the order of conditions put together, we can send you a copy, so you'll have it in advance.
Yep.
We won't send it to you the day of the meeting.
Okay, one item that, right now the road is named Road A.
Right.
So there should be a condition at least that says a name acceptable to the fire chief and police chief needs to be added to the final Mylar.
Bylaws have street names?
Right, we have a street name
Okay,
list.
great.
You can choose a name from the official street name list. And if your developer likes one of the names on there, that's fine. We've had developers propose names in the past, but if it's not on the list, it's a hard sell. Because basically what was happening was all the streets in town were named after the developers.
Right. Or their kids.
Or their kids, right.
Trees they knocked down, they say.
Right, yeah. So, but there is a street name list in town.
Okay.
So we could get you a copy of that, and you could look at what's available. I know there's still a lot of presidents' names left, so
Okay.
might have a
Is
link in there.
Trump name on there?
Excuse me?
You say presidents, is Trump on there?
No, I don't think we went that far. So, but, excuse me?
Water Street.
I don't know if that's on the lane. So, but we will get you a copy of that. I think it should be available at the town clerk's office, as far as I know.
I think it's online in the bylaws.
Is it in the bylaws?
I think so.
You read it?
All right.
Okay,
So,
yeah. If not, the town
Give the
clerk,
selectmen's office, too, yeah.
town clerk should have it, or the selectman's office, yeah.
Okay.
Take a look at that, and if you want to propose one of those names, that would be fine. It's a lot easier for us if it's off the list. And was there anything else that you had?
I think I'm fine.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
I don't know that I'll make the trip down here on the 24th. Maybe I'll,
Okay, it's up to you.
yeah, I'll send Joe.
Okay.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
thanks for visiting.
Can I sign the one I wasn't here for?
If you read it and you agree with it,
Okay.
you don't have to.
No, I just didn't know.
Yeah, if you read it and you agree with it, that's fine.
First page, so.
So was that one copy of each, or do we need 2 copies of each?
Two of each, right? So, yeah, we're missing the one from the
Send one to
12th,
the
I
clerk,
think?
one in the office.
Where's the 12th and 26th?
We only have one of the shorter ones.
Okay, so it's missing the one from the 12th. Let's re-sign this one.
Okay.
That one?
Yes, you only have one from the 26th, one copy so far signed. We're looking for a second one.
Oh, from the 26th,
Yep.
okay, I got the 12th, sorry. One more copy. Those 2. John, maybe you could just mention to Carol, my middle initial is E, not V.
Still wrong?
Yeah, but that's okay. I signed it right.
Is it on the front page?
She didn't convince me.
Front page, we'll change it.
It's at the end.
Going back there.
And that's the problem.
You don't want to change it to make it easier for him?
Hmm?
You don't want to change your middle name to make it a little bit easier for him?
No, could be a Victor. All right, before we go back to our other agenda items, I think we have somebody in the audience. Yes, could you come up and tell us what your issue is?
My name's Andrew Aslin. I live on 45 Flaxfoot Road in Dudley. I own 2 lots that I bought back in '77 from Joe Morse,
Okay,
and it was deeded back to his wife after he died, of course, and now it's deeded to his daughters. And I talked to both of his daughters, and they're willing to let me buy. Did you want to see this?
it would help us to understand what you're talking about. If you could bring a copy up, that would be good.
I can bring it up. Lot,
Probably,
this is Ridge Drive. Ridge Drive. And this is Packet Drive.
Yep.
This is lot 20.
what if we get Fred to? Close up.
I think we talk about those two there.
This is off of Schofield Avenue.
Where's Packet Drive?
It may be a paper street.
Oh.
Okay, so we're talking about 19 and 20.
Excuse me?
We're talking
Yeah,
about 19 and 20.
Yeah, we built all the homes on Ridge Drive.
Yep.
And we built 18 of them. And 19 and 20 was left. And my father didn't want to build on them. So what happened is, after we were done, I bought them from Joe Morse. And I bought lot 19 and lot 20. But Packet Drive is just like a paper road.
Paper road, correct.
And the first 210 feet still was owned by Joe Morse. So what happened was, it was deeded to his wife, and now the daughters want to sell it to me, but they can't find a deed because so many years have gone by.
Okay.
And I told him maybe you should go see a lawyer. Maybe you can get yourself a new deed if you can't find the owner. So what I like to do to get to 19, I would use lot 19 and 20 just as one lot, because from Schofield Ave, going back 200 feet, it's light industrial. So lot 20 can't really be used.
Okay.
So the rest of the 50 feet, I would put it into lot 19, and that would give me over 30,000 square feet.
Okay.
And what I would like to know is if I could put a driveway and come into Packet Drive beyond that line, you see?
Yep.
I'm trying to bind right up to that line. Then I'm gonna need some footage to get into lot 19.
Mm-hmm.
So I would like that to be my driveway. And there'd only be one house on the 2 lots.
Yep. And this doesn't have a date on here, plan book. 67, filed in, yeah, okay, so this was already filed at the Registry of Deeds in 1967.
Excuse me?
This was already filed at the Registry of Deeds in 1967.
Yeah.
And there's a 60-foot right-of-way called out for Packet Drive. So you wouldn't need 60 feet to build a driveway.
Oh, no, all I want is a narrow strip on that Packet Drive
Right,
to be able to go maybe 30 feet into my lot,
right.
or 50 feet.
Yep. Yeah, so what are you asking from us?
Oh, be able to use that 30 or 50 feet of
You-
package drive?
If you, once you own lot 19 and 20,
Yeah.
you have a right to use Packard Drive. Because your lots will front on Packard Drive, and Packard Drive is what they call, even though it's a paper street, it's a way in
Yeah.
existence, because it was filed at the Registry of Deeds in 1967.
Oh, okay,
So you have that right.
all
I
right.
think what we're looking for is an abbreviated construction plan, not a full subdivision street, in other words.
Because he's not gonna make this an actual street, it's only gonna access the one lot.
Right.
So you would want us to grant you a waiver to build a driveway instead of building the road.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
Okay, I think that would be agreeable to the planning board. We've done that in the past.
Oh, that sounds good. Because I was landlocked.
Yeah.
I've been landlocked all these years.
Yeah, you could use it. It's easier for you to come out of Schofield Ave than it is to go through Ridge Drive.
Because nobody knew who owned that. My daughter found out that Joe Morse owned that first 210 feet, right up to that line. And that's when I contacted them last week.
Yeah.
And they both agreed to sell that to me.
Okay.
What are the terrain and soil conditions out there?
Excuse me?
Terrain, you know, shape of the land, and soil conditions?
Yeah, it's all gravel. It's 100% gravel.
Relatively flat?
Excuse me?
Relatively flat?
Is the-
Relatively flat?
Oh, yeah. It, actually, it goes up maybe a foot on that, on 300 feet.
Okay.
But it's already lawn. There's a lawn there.
Okay.
People actually cut it.
So you would have to find out, I believe there is water and sewer on Schofield Ave, so you would have to run a water and sewer line.
I want to put a well and a septic tank. I had it perked,
Okay?
and it had a 2-minute perk, because it's all gravel.
And how many square feet will the lot be when you're done?
Well, it's going to be 28 plus 5 times, about 40,000 square feet.
Okay, that's the minimum size lot you can build a septic system and a well on in the state of Massachusetts now. You need a
Oh,
minimum.
40,000?
You need a minimum of 40,000 square
Okay.
feet.
If I didn't have that much, the first 100 feet, which is a light
Industrial?
industrial, could I use part of that?
Yes.
If I
Yeah. You
still could
can't,
use-
you can't build a house in a light industrial zone, but if you wanted to put a well or a septic in there, you could.
Okay. Because I did have it perked when my daughter was going to build a house there.
Yep.
And she got moved to downtown Boston, so
Okay.
the commute would have been too far.
Yep.
All right, I'm not going to hold you people up.
No problem. Thank you for waiting patiently.
You might want to watch a game or something. Well, I thank you.
Yeah, I'll give it back.
Give him back to him.
Oh, you can keep this if you want.
You can hold on to it, and if you want to come back, when you get everything straightened out, and you want to come back and ask for the waiver for the road construction down to a driveway, you would have to just get on the agenda, talk to Dawn, get on the agenda, and we make it an agenda item, and we could vote on it for you.
All right. You want to keep this one?
Maybe I might as well, sure.
Okay.
Yeah, sure, I'll keep it. For the record, yeah. All right, thank you.
Because I got a bunch.
Okay, good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you. Good
night.
Okay. So let's see if we can get through the rest of our agenda quickly here. So we'll go back to item D. This was the discussion of finishing construction and acceptance of ways for completed and unaccepted subdivision streets, including Pierpont Estates, Rocky Hill Estates, Piastra Road, Country View Estates, Tobin Farms.
Want to have anything on at Sobel Farms? You have a letter in there and an email from town council.
Right.
The sidewalk question.
Yep.
And George Slingo stopped in tonight. He's looking to get a contract. It would actually be with the town because the way it will be paid, but he has a $10,000. There's 10,000 needed. I'm not sure. They're doing the as-built plans, the street acceptance plans.
Okay. So have you talked to him about what the town council's decision was on the sidewalks?
No, I didn't have that one. I want to talk about it with the board first.
Okay. So basically, what the town, did everybody have a chance to read that?
Yes.
So their decision is basically, there may not be a law right now that would say if we accepted it without sidewalks, that we'd be in trouble, but they wouldn't recommend it.
The thing she said to me too was that, if you build it, you're responsible for it. In other words, if it's built, it's responsible for being right. Responsibility that's built right. If you don't build it, it doesn't come into effect. But there is a tendency now towards wanting sidewalks for
Yeah.
a whole number of purposes.
Right. So, I mean, the way, I mean, everybody could interpret that memo how they want, but the way I interpreted it is we shouldn't accept it. And her recommendation was for the town not to accept the road if the sidewalk wasn't
Better
completed.
safe than sorry,
Right,
10 or 15 years
Yeah.
from now.
right. Because like I said, it's not what's happening now, it's what's happening, you know, somebody buys a house or builds another house on that street 10 years down the road and has a child that's handicapped and there's no sidewalks. They come to the town and say, I want a sidewalk put in. We're gonna be responsible. So, Rocky Hill Estates, the attorney that was representing, it was Rocky Hill Estates against a local realtor and attorney, was in the office last Thursday. And she got all of her information that she needed, so as far as we know, she's happy. Piastre Road, I haven't heard anything on that. Country View Estates. So, I guess what the selectmen were upset with us about was the fact that there is a town bylaw that was adopted at some point in time in the early 2000s that says that if a subdivision was built and comes before the town for road acceptance and the subdivision roadway is older than 2 years old, they would like the developer to seal coat the road. The issue with that is that the town bylaws are enforced by the Board of Selectmen. They're not enforced by the Planning Board. So we have no jurisdiction to enforce this. And when this subdivision, to my knowledge, when this subdivision was applied for and granted, this bylaw did not exist. So it's after the fact. So I let the developer know about this because he recently came to us and said that he would be willing to do the remaining work that he saw that was necessary for the road, which was fixing of the catch basin, fixing a water shut-off valve that had raised up in the road, and there was 2 cracks across the road that he was going to have fixed. And if we were willing to basically waive the seal coat and the street trees, which we took a vote on, but we really have no authority on seal coating because that's a town bylaw. It's not a rule and regulation of the subdivision control. So what I said to the developer is I would be willing to go with him to a Board of Selectmen meeting and see what the Board of Selectmen is going to make him do. Basically, what he's told me is he's willing to finish the subdivision, do those things, get it done, put it up for acceptance, but if the Board of Selectmen are going to say no because it's not seal coated, he's not going to seal coat it. So then the road won't be accepted. So, I mean, our duty is to try to get the road accepted, you know, so we can say that we nominate this road for acceptance. If the Board of Selectmen says no, that's their prerogative, you know. If we say he's met the covenant that we gave him when he started the subdivision, he's met all his requirements of the covenant, that's all we can force him to do. I know there was talk about us taking the money that was left in the bond and trying to have the road seal coated, but if that was not part of the subdivision covenant, I don't know how we could do that legally. I'm not an attorney, but I don't think we could if it wasn't part of the subdivision. And his comment to me was, if you guys had told me this, you know, 10 years ago or whenever he took out the covenant, he said I would have made sure that there was money for this and it would have been set aside in a separate account and I would have got it done. But he's like, there was no talk about this when
So he's in essence, he's grandfathered in because it's.
I would think so, but,
Because it's
you know, I
done
can't
before.
speak for the Board of Selectmen, so that's why I told him I would go with him to the Board of Selectmen, and he can plead his case, and, I mean, I don't know if the rest of you went and took a look, but I went and took a look at Dave's Way, which was seal-coated a year ago, And it looked great when it was seal coated. It was all nice and shiny and black, and it looked great. And now it's a year later, and it doesn't look so good. I mean, I went over to Eisenhower Drive and looked at that, and I mean, they're literally a quarter of a mile apart. So you can look at one and drive down the street and look at the other, and you're gonna say, Eisenhower looks a lot better than Dave's Way does after it's been seal coated a year later. So, I mean, I don't know why would we make somebody seal coat a road that looks better than a road that was just seal coated? That's my opinion, but I'm not the Board of Selectmen, so they have to take a look at this and see if this is something they're gonna hold, steadfast to and make it a requirement of everybody, or, I mean, Dave's Way, I'm sure, was enacted long before that bylaw too, but he chose to do it to get the road accepted. But I like I said, in my personal opinion, Eisenhower Drive is in much better condition than Dave's Way is now, even after it was seal coated, so, I mean, I think we have to be reasonable with, I don't think we can have one bylaw that blankets everything and says after 2 years, the road's gonna be bad, because if you build a good road, it should last longer than 2 years,
Right.
so. Okay, and then we already talked about Tobin Farm Estates. I'm assuming there's no new news on AMP Solar, that's the one in West Dudley?
Nope.
Okay, so we can move along that. We've already done the public hearing. That brings us down to F, discussion on the status of the economic development planning.
Spoke to my contact at CMRPC, willing to speak to her. I sent her an email. She's going to call me tomorrow.
Okay.
Particularly about that farmers forum we were talking about.
Right.
Yeah.
The emails that went back and forth?
Yeah.
Okay.
So we're looking at some, did I send that to you? I'm not sure if I did or not. A copy of the board members or not, I can't remember, but we're looking at either the last week, sometime in November, either the first or second full week.
Okay.
Certainly not Thanksgiving week.
Right.
And not too far into December either, because then
Christmas.
it's holiday season parties.
Okay.
I can't believe we're this far into the year. It's crazy.
Yeah, it seems like it's almost Christmas, doesn't it?
Let's not rush it
Snow.
that fast. No snow.
No, don't even say that word.
Anything on the planner's plate?
Well, I had someone walk in the office today about, this afternoon, and I think I showed you this one guy when you were in the office. Apparently, some time ago, like 1970 or so, notebook here. Turn to tab F, or G.
G?
G.
Okay, so this was from Mr. Attorney Brusso, local attorney in town. Dear Mr. Johnson, dear Mr. Johnson, attached is a certificate of performance which I'm asking you to submit tonight to the planning board for their approval. As per our meeting this afternoon, I also ask you to provide the members of the planning board the copies of the recorded covenant, the assessor's map, and aerial photographs, which I've provided for you this afternoon. As I indicated, I have spoken with the assessor, Lisa Berg, who indicated to me that the street was paved. Again, thank you for all your help and advice this afternoon. Thomas Russo, Esquire. So apparently there's a lot on, lot number 4 on St. Anthony Road, which is off of Raymond Street.
Which is off
Dresser Hill.
Dresser Hill Road.
Hill Road, yeah.
Yep, Route 31.
31, yeah.
And so this lot it's currently vacant, right?
Right.
The lot is vacant, but the lot was never released from the covenant. So basically, all we would be doing is releasing the lot, because the road is complete in front of the street. The street in front of the lot is complete, so there's no need for it to be held to the covenant anymore, that the infrastructure is done.
Which is an empty lot, nothing's been built on it.
Nothing's been built up on it,
So that's what they're asking? They want it to be released so they can build on it?
probably, nobody's gonna wanna buy a lot that's still being held by a covenant. So basically, you need the lot released so you can build on it.
Do they have to pay a fee for that? Even though it's
Uh,
not in the covenant?
Not because, not now because the street is completed. If the street was incompleted, they would have to pay a bond or something to make sure that the street would be
Maybe not
done.
done, okay.
But in front of this house, the street is completed, it's paved.
Actually, 3 houses on it already.
There's 3 houses there
Side.
already. Do you have those photographs and stuff that he provided?
Thought I did. Want me to run back? Must look like this, I'm sorry.
Okay. But you have, so basically you want us to vote to release that lot, and that's, he's gonna have, that paperwork's gonna have all the nomenclature that we need, correct?
Right.
All right. Let me go take a look, see if I can find it.
Can we move to adjourn now?
I don't know. They come back, we won't be here.
We're still a majority.
That's right. What are they looking for?
We're looking for the paperwork. We
Oh,
can't
okay.
make a motion without the lot number and all that kind of good stuff. So we're looking for the paperwork. Don left it in his office. Hopefully.
What's the baby's name?
Xavier.
Oh, I love that name, that's nice.
Okay,
Oh,
sorry
you
about
found it
that.
easily.
I'd seen it, but I didn't know it wasn't here, sorry. Okay, so this is basically a Form E, Certificate of Performance. Down in Dudley, Massachusetts. The undersigned, being a majority of the Planning Board of the Town of Dudley, Massachusetts, hereby certify that the requirement of work on the ground called for by the covenant dated September 9th, 1971, and recorded in Worcester Registry of Deeds, Book 5161, page 426, have been completed to the satisfaction of the Planning Board as to the following encumbered lots shown on the plan entitled Plan of Lots in Dudley, Mass., developed by L&Z Earth Movers, recorded with said deed, Plan Book 354, Plan 18. Said lots are hereby released from the restrictions as to sale and building specified thereon. Lots designated on said plan as follows: Lot 37 of Plan Book 377, Plan number 69. Do you have the pictures? So this is Raymond Street, this is 31 over here. St. Anthony is a small street that's a dead-end street, comes down, there's 1, 2, 3 houses. This is on the corner, so this is the lot right here, that you're talking about,
Yep.
right there.
We just have to move to accept as written, or as read?
Yeah.
I move to accept as read, releasing the lot from the covenant.
Okay,
Suggestion, if you're gonna be the notary, maybe you shouldn't make the motion.
Oh, okay, then I won't make the motion. I'll withdraw that motion.
would somebody else like to make a motion as read?
I make a motion that we accept releasing this lot as read.
Okay,
I second.
we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous?
Abstain.
Yeah. Today is 10/10.
Do we all have to sign that?
A majority. Okay, and I don't think we'll have any more comments from the audience.
Kind of quiet tonight.
Was that all that you had on your planner's plate, Don?
Did you want to mention the draft conditions here, Don, or?
Yeah, we
No, no,
can take a look
no,
at
no,
those.
no.
Think about the draft conditions and,
Is there enough for everybody?
yeah,
Okay.
sure.
What is this?
These are draft
Can I
conditions
get
for
one
for Dudley Hill Estates. You
Are
know
these
what?
these aren't complete, right?
No, it's just things that, standard things that we look for in a subdivision approval. Try to get the wording in on the situation, 6. And, you know, there's a few other things, we talked about a few other things tonight too, like, times of operation, the homeowners association.
Yeah, so right now, he's up to 19 conditions. We could easily have 24 or 26. Or some of these may not be pertinent, we may eliminate them. But I think we definitely want to make sure that we have a condition in there for work times, you know, delayed hours and this kind of thing. I mean, we've had in the past conditions where there's no work on Sundays.
I think that would be good.
Saturdays are like, you know, 7 to 3 or something like that, or 8 to 3. Maybe a little later on
I was gonna say,
Saturdays.
yeah.
Sundays, work days, the regular work day might be 7 to 5 or 7 to 6. See if they, you know, that's all the conditions are negotiable, so. We can ask for a lot and see what happens. Okay,
These are just some things you may not have seen before, so I just wanted to sort of
put them in there.
put them in perspective and
Yep.
think about it.
Okay. Anything else?
I guess, if you want to send me comments, you can send them directly to me.
Okay.
Yeah, I would ask that you don't send them to the other
Send them to
members of
board
the planning
members, okay.
boards. Just send them to Dawn, let him collect them, and then we'll see them all at the meeting.
I thought send them directly to me, we'll compile them and discuss them at the next meeting.
All right.
Okay. Anything else?
That's about it.
Okay. Anybody want to make a motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn the meeting.
Okay, we have a
second that.
motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Unanimous? Thank you and good
Everybody
night.
can make- Everybody can make it Monday night?
Monday night.
Should be able
Yeah.
to, yep.
I should be able to be here.
Should be
Should
quick.
too.